and we will start with the Irish Independent. Horn's broadside at RTE over TV game schedule reads the back page of the Irish Independent this morning. It's Michael Verney's piece that the GAA president is bemoaning national broadcaster for choosing strategy driven by numbers. We'll come back to that very shortly. Sean Cronin then is fit, which is good news from a Leinster perspective for tomorrow's Champions Cup final. And Ring of Steel for final in Madrid. The biggest security operation in Champions League history is being planned for next month's final between Liverpool and Spurs in Madrid. Oh. Are you going to be there?
Wish I say I could, but no, probably not.
Got priced out of You weren't confident enough to buy tickets beforehand?
No, I didn't preempt it. I believe they're going for like 2.5, 3K. It would be fantastic. It'd be absolutely brilliant atmosphere. But no, unfortunately not.
No, it's going to be interesting when it comes to, I guess, two English teams against one another. The thing is always thrown about that they need to clamp down on security and all that, and that seems to be the case with this story anyway.
Yeah. I have in the Star, we have Full House. This is a team that's obviously going through the red tops a bit after last night. So you've obviously Full House with Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs and Liverpool all in, which is pretty phenomenal when you think about it. I mean, people would have bemoaned the fact that there was always this talk of the Premier League, the greatest league in the world, and it was kind of like, really? Chris Kamara or someone else probably pushing it a lot. But actually, to be fair to them now, it's you can't really argue with that.
No,
all the teams.
You really can't, and you add to that the insane quality in the 2-horse race we've had in the Premier League as
Absolutely.
well. It's been a brilliant endorsement for the Premier League the last few months. The Irish Times goes with furlong primed to front up the team that goes for the juggler. It's Jerry Thornley's piece ahead of tomorrow's Champions Cup final. Matt Williams then says Leinster tactics married to courage, key to Leinster lifting the trophy.
Yeah. In the Herald, we've got a new deal for Klopp. There's speculation that the pool boss will stay at Anfield with Juventus in the background, and Kenny's Dubs hit on the double. This talk there about Matt Kenny's, the Dublin hurlers who have got a bit of a blow with the talk that Mark Schutte and Paul Winters, I think Schutte was injured for quite a considerable amount of time this year anyway, but they're saying that those two guys are out for the match coming up against the Cats at the weekend.
The Irish Daily Mail goes with "Don't boo him." Saracens boss hopes Leinster crowd won't abuse Vunipola, and heartbreak for Ireland as they draw 1-1 with Belgium, crashing out of the under-17s despite not losing a game. And Arsenal and Chelsea join Euro Premier party. They beat Valencia last night, Arsenal did, and Chelsea beat Frankfurt on penalties.
Yeah, the Mirror Sport goes with a full English again, which is a nice little headline. And we got caned. This is an interesting one where Trippier is talking about the fact that Harry managed to get into the dressing room at half-time and give them a good cane and gave them a good kicking. The Spurs players, he said he went mental at half-time, and it was great leadership, and they all reacted.
Would you be playing a 70% fit Harry Kane, an 80% fit Harry Kane?
Not even 100%.
No?
No.
You'd bench Harry Kane for the final?
Yeah.
Why?
Because he's missed too much, and I think it's the prime example that people make, or mistake that people make. They okay, he's back, we're going to try him, play the guys that have been playing, play the fellas that have had the football. He's missed so much. Put him on the bench, and if you need him, bring him on. But no, being ready, training fit to match fit is completely different. Even the sharpness, everything else. There's going to be a massive temptation to play him if he is ready. But I think Pochettino would be better served not to start him.
Yeah, you kind of feel for him as well. He'll be devastated. Like the timing of this, even if he had a few more Premier League games, to actually just work his way back to match sharpness.
Yeah. If you got one, even if you got one game, just to kind of help him along. But I just think it's going to be, and it will be hard for him. But you know what, he'll be okay.
The Racing Post this morning, the back page goes with Spurs. Spurs 13-8 to complete miracle, says Mark Langdon. And I think that's it. Or do you have one more?
Yeah, no, just the Irish Examiner Sport actually has a good pull out this morning. And part of it is the pressure cooker Eamon Fitzmaurice has actually done a decent interview on the second and third page where he's just lifting the lid on inter-county management, talking about his time with Kerry, obviously, the things he enjoyed and the things he didn't enjoy, which was mostly talking to players and telling them that they weren't going to be picked for the weekend or they're outside the championship squad, and referees. The referees thing is something he's aired previously. The interesting thing is he talks about the role of an inter-county manager in terms of being
in terms of their human relationship with their players.
Yeah.
And he talks about like giving relationship advice and to some of the players and telling them how to get a kid to sleep at night and stuff like that. Something I really didn't know. I was like, fair enough if you're kind of talking to them about careers and stuff, but this is deeply personal stuff.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's you know, there's a part. It's actually in the same paper in the Examiner. There's actually a pretty good article as well on page, where is it? At page 19 or 20 here, where it actually goes through the backroom team that Dublin had. And it's just questioning, you know, is it too much? Is it overkill? Or is it what is required in obviously the modern game? And there's a picture of the backroom team that Dublin had. It's on page 10 actually. And by my calculations, I think there's roughly about 20 people there involved, maybe more. And it says, strength in numbers are too many cooks, the backroom conundrum, and it's by Declan Bogue. But when you want to get down to the minutiae of all of that stuff, such as, you know, listen, your training's a little bit off, you're tired, what's up? Well, you know, we've had a new baby, the baby's not sleeping, okay, well, you know, as a manager, you know, as the club manager going, oh, okay, you know, have you tried whatever, you're just throwing it out there, but it's getting so much that you actually need people who can actually say, well, okay, well, talk to Eoin, you know, he might have a bit of advice for you. And there's someone who's actually looking after all that personal stuff, be it relationships with wives and girlfriends, be it, you know, relationships with colleagues even in work or fellas on the team, and then, as you say, down to personal stuff such as this, because it all, whatever affects, you know, all the 1% that it will affect a player as he goes out in the pitch, unless you've actually really discussed it and, you know, maybe put an action around it, it's something that can obviously, you know, affect the performance. So as a manager, you really don't want to be kind of sitting there going, you know, I should have spoken to him about that in the build-up to the championship game, and then you went out and had a stinker. You know, you know, and that is simply it. You have to try to get everything right and everything, as much as you can, everything ready for the big day. So I can imagine.
Go to a manager about something.
Like not back in my day. You know, I believe I said that, but you didn't really get down to that granular level. You didn't. You know, like, I mean, it was kind of like, you know, you look a bit tired. Yeah, I've been working hard or whatever it is. And it was like, okay, you know, maybe take tomorrow night's session off. But of course, there was only a few managers who would do that. A lot of managers are like, no, you have to be here, 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 here. And there was no excuses type thing. But now it has become much more understanding, I suppose, but there's a double-edged sword there. You know, you could be saying to me, oh, you know, I'm really tired, and, you know, and you're saying, okay, Eoin, take it easy. But then I have to understand when you're actually just taking the piss. Yeah. You know, when you're just going, you just don't want to do the hard work here. And that then gets down to your knowledge of the actual player, and also your backroom team, and actually being able to say, well, is this guy being really genuine? Now, you would hope in an inter-county setup that everyone is, but there's still fellas who will, you know, throw the leg if they can or pull the leg if they can. So it's a situation where you have to, the major thing about it is just, you know, you go back to the talk about Liverpool the last few days and the analysis of the ball boys and what Klopp was saying to some of his backroom team, that he wasn't happy about the speed that the ball was going. Like, I mean, that is unbelievable that a manager of a team with all that's going on is clocking that in his brain, making a mental note and then addressing it. You know, that is really getting down to the minutiae of stuff. And then having it prepared and giving the action to one of the backroom staff to say, okay, we want certain people around the thing who will do this job for us as part of the whole night. And essentially GAA has moved from, well, we're just picking a team based on performance, to now really getting into, well, what gets you to that point in the best shape that you're in? And if that is something that you can't sleep at night due to a child, or whatever it is, something that's keeping you awake because you've worries about it, whatever, well, we need to address that. You know, and it's only going to get more and more, you know, like, I mean, on this backroom thing. Yeah,
what do you think about that? Strength in numbers versus too many cooks? What side of the fence do you fall on?
Like, I mean, it's needed. It is needed. Genuinely, it's needed. Like, I mean, if Kerry, you know, if you had the Kerry backroom team down there, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 16 to 20 people as well. You know, I met Andy McEntee during the week, and just, you know, I was at a thing about a month ago with the sponsor, the guys from Devonish, and they did it for the players and the players' girlfriends and wives and family. It was a great idea. It's something that hasn't been done since the Keypack days, you know, and it was a really nice thing to do, because a lot of sponsors sometimes just, there's the money, you know, you might come down once, but there's really no interaction with the players. And it was a great idea to do it. And I think it really helped with a bit of atmosphere around the camp. But my point is that I was just observing in the room the amount of backroom staff, shall we say, and it's a big team as well. You know, you need someone on logistics, you need someone on admin, obviously you need the fitness and everything else, but you need a lot of people behind the scene so that, you know, come the week of a game, or the build-up to a game, or even game day, that all you're essentially doing is you're saying, well, every single scenario that possibly could happen, bar an alien landing on the pitch here, has been already discussed, organised, and we know how we're going to react, you know, because that's why you see a lot of managers on the sideline. Like, people talk about Gavin, that he's emotionless, but he's preempted so much of this, that anything that happens, if you notice, when a sending off happens, he gets one of his players to sprint over to him. Generally, it's James McCarthy. So something happens, someone gets sent off or something, he'll have one player sprint over to him and stand beside him. Even if there's a melee happening, he'll have one player stand beside him and he'll have a discussion with that player. And I'm sure it's, okay, we know what to do here, get the word around, whatever it is, there could be a call for it. And straight away there's a sense of calm. You know, it's not like we're all in there and it's like frantic, where do we go? One player comes over, they have the discussion, he goes back, the word is spread, and then they get on with it.
Is that the only time Gavin tends to do that?
I very rarely see him talk to players.
Yeah.
Like Jason Sherlock would usually do his running for him, but that is the only time that I ever really see him actually get up nearly out of his seat in Croke Park. And so that's all, that doesn't happen by chance. That's being thought of. How do we do it? What's the best way to get that message on? What's the best way to calm things down, to reset, you know, to get back into our, you know, our thinking of where we have to go next, whether we're 3 points down, 6 points down, or whether we've just lost 2 men to red cards, or whatever it is. And all of that stuff, like, you know, in the white heat, when you're under, like, I mean, and there's so much going on, your head can easily go. You know, it can easily go, and I even know it from myself from the club stuff. It can just go. Something happens out of the blue, and you know, next thing, and you're using up so much energy, and you can't make a clear decision. And at the end of the day, as the manager on the sideline, the one thing you need to be able to do is have clarity and make a decision on, okay, do I bring Eoin on here? You can't make rash decisions, because more than likely a rash decision will backfire.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. I want to touch on John Horan's comments. Back page of the Irish Independent this morning. Horan's broadsided RTE over TV game schedule. He's bemoaned the national broadcaster choosing strategy driven by numbers. He says, he's got one anecdote here. He says, Dublin played a Leinster Football Championship match, which was a foregone conclusion in the last 2 years. And when I spoke to the head of RTE, he said, John, we are driven by figures. We'll get over 300,000 people watching that game. So unfortunately, they're driven by numbers, and that's the control they have over it at the moment. But certainly the next deal will be looking for greater coverage for your actual games in it, and the only way we are going to get it is to tie it into a contract and not give them the flexibility of choice. Which would be interesting that all of a sudden RTE would be under the diktat of the GAA in terms of what games they can show or what games they should be showing.
Absolutely. Like, you know, they're a business. Like, I don't think I'd be too happy if someone came in and said, listen, you can only sell to a certain quota of your clients. And then when you have to sell to the other, whether they want to buy or not. You know, like, I mean, the reason they put Dublin on is because they're going to get the most people watching it.
Yeah, driven by numbers is kind of pointing out the obvious.
Yeah, and like, you know, well, you know, you could flip it and say, well, then why are Dublin playing all their games in Croke Park? Is that not being driven by numbers?
Yeah. Yeah,
it's the same thing.
Exactly.
You know, if I was the head of RTE, I'd say, okay, well, you know, why don't we get Dublin out to Parnell Park then the next day? Because that's like, you know, it's two sides of the same coin there. I can kind of understand, like, there is this talk about, and I've seen it over the last few days, you know, this talk, it's amazing in the GAA, stuff just kind of comes out under the ether and then it kind of starts to grow, you know. So the two-tier championship is obviously, it's been kicked around a long time, but it's now really starting to get legs. It seems even every manager pre-championship is kind of throwing it in, and you can understand that with that, teams want the chance of, you know, getting on TV, playing in front of crowds or whatever it is in a two-tier championship. And to really promote that championship, you are going to have to give it some oomph, some media attention behind the scenes. But I think, look, you well know, we've spoken about this, the stories that would be maybe potentially in those squads, in those two-tier championship games would be fantastic. You know, like, I mean, maybe some stories about London or some players in London that, you know, no one has ever heard about. And there's a ways of promoting these games rather than just having the glitzy affair, you know, which Dublin are generally part of, or the big teams. Yes, it will take a bit more of a buy-in, I suppose, from the media companies, but you know, most people just want to watch a good game of football or hurling, you know, something that's competitive, or soccer, you know, something with a bit of excitement. The one thing you don't want to watch is, you know, London versus Dublin, and they're just parking the bus and they're getting bet by 25 points. That's not entertainment. So, you know, the big thing for RTE is, and the GAA is, how do we actually sell the game now that it's entertaining? You know, it's funny, I spoke to a guy, actually a guy I know from the States, but he's mad into Irish sports. And he just said to me, he says, the last couple of years, he said, I love watching the hurling. He says, the football is just, you know, I don't really watch it anymore. And I said, well, you have to give it a chance. I said, you know, there are. And he said, it's just so boring. Like, that's just someone who's totally removed from here, but that is his view on it. You know, and you're kind of going, yeah, he has a point. You know? So, I think, regardless of even what you do with changes of laws and different stuff, the major thing is let's get two similar level teams playing each other, and there can be a bit of excitement. When
you say that there's managers talking about a Tier 2 championship, like, do you feel that the number of managers talking about it is growing? I think John Evans was speaking about it this week. Is there a few other managers?
Yeah, John Evans, I saw Kearns mention it too, Liam Kearns mentioned it too. Definitely, your man Kieran Deely from London mentioned it, obviously. And to be fair, he's right. You know, like, I mean, they were within a kick of ball there. You know, there were 4 points bet by Galway. They had a great chance near the end that could have went in for a goal. You know, they've been battling hard, and wouldn't it be great for them to get into something that they can actually go and win? Like, people say, you know, some guys will say, well, you know, there's no point if you're not going to win the other. Like, let's be honest, lads. There's 28 counties, 26 definitely, who have no chance of winning the All-Ireland every year. Not a chance. The bookies don't get it wrong, you know, like, and that is just a simple fact. So wouldn't it be great that there is something there for the bottom 16 or whatever it is, that they can say, no, you know what? And there's an incentive. You have to give an incentive to that. Whether the incentive is Croke Park, whether the incentive is playing on TV, or whether the incentive is that we go and we actually get promoted or something. You know, there's a structured incentive, a strategic incentive for how you know, move on for the next season. So if you win it, what happens to you? You know, if you're in Division 3, it doesn't matter, will you get seeded or something? You can structure all of these things, but there's definitely, you have to get a situation where it starts to mean more, because you're seeing a massive amount of people not buying into it because they're going, no, I'm just going to get hammered, and you know what, for 1 or 2 games a year, no thanks, I'm going to go off and play a different sport. Or B, they just head to the States during the summer.
John Horan saying that, I know it's an obvious thing, and I know that all the GAA know the issues that they have when it comes to the difference of standard when it comes to certain counties taking part in the same competition, but referring to a Leinster Championship game as a foregone conclusion, I don't recall any of the top brass of the GAA ever referring to a match as a foregone conclusion in their own championships, which I know it's not the point of his quotes here, it's just something in the middle of his string of words, but like, if there was any other organisation who referred to one of their games as a foregone conclusion, I'm sure they'd be taking fairly swift action to ensure that competition no longer goes down the path it's going.
Yeah, and it's a slip of the tongue. You know, it's probably just something that it's obviously in his psyche, and so it should be. He's a Dublin man. He has seen Dublin, you know, kind of just run through Leinster over the last number of years without Eoin laying a glove. But if he actually sat back and thought about it, he'd be like, yeah, this isn't good for one of my premier competitions. You know, as part of it, that this is allowed to happen, first of all, and that it is happening. So there's a major imbalance. I think the balance is starting to, like, you know, when you talk about the funding and everything else, and we would have talked about this when there's nothing else to talk about, like last, you know, in January, so you see the funding and you see the numbers that come out, and lots of people writing about it. But like Meath, for example, over the last number of years, and Kildare and a couple of the counties around Dublin, there's been an increase in funding, and there's been an increase in the amount of coaches and stuff that have been put into clubs. And it is definitely working. There's no doubt about it. I have seen the standard improve massively over the last 4 years in Meath, from underage all the way through to the senior championship. It has improved. The guys coming up, it's just got better. Their physiques are getting better. Their conditioning is better. And you know, people might say, well, that's really boring. But to compete with the likes of the Dublins and the Mayos and the Kerrys, you have to get that right first and foremost. You have to get the physique, the conditioning. You have to be able to stay with the person. At least, you know, then your skill can come in, your ability, your mental strength and all that different stuff. And then you layer and layer and layer and layer on top. But that only comes with the foundations built first, and you're starting to see that, and you're starting to see that with 17, 18, 19-year-olds now who are coming up. They're physically, you know, even in minor games, you can see it. There's no real great, like, whoa, the Dublin minor team are much bigger than the Meath team or whoever it is you're saying. Actually, you know, they're matched up pretty well now. So that's the first one. Obviously, the skill and ability will come through too, but then you know, there's also the thing of, well, are they used to playing against these teams and beating them? Or at least competing. So when they come into a senior championship then, or a senior county team at 24, 25, they're like, no, we've been here before, I've played on before, I've done pretty well against them, or I've beaten them before. It's not this, because I can imagine the last number of years, like I would have always felt, rightly or wrongly, that we had chances of beating Dublin and winning Leinsters, right? So you would go into the start of your training with the idea that is potentially the carrot that's there. So you would train hard, you would do all the slog, because that is the North Star. But over the last, say, 4, 5, 6 years, imagine being a player in a Leinster squad outside of Dublin. You know, Kildare, Meath, Laois, whoever it is. You know, you really, really in the back of your mind when you're going to bed, really sore, you're going to bed, you're saying to yourself, are we going to win? Are we going to beat Dublin this year? You know, because the chasm was so big. There's no possible way, if you're being really honest with yourself, you'd say, we have the capabilities of beating these. And that's a pretty disheartening situation to be in. You know, and I know there's lots of counties who are in that, but what has happened is the pool got an awful lot smaller, I think, over the last number of years. Now I think it's actually starting to broaden out again.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit more hope for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, if you're looking for a bit of hope, if you want to see the 5 in a row stopped, Kieran Shannon's got a good piece in the Irish Examiner today, kind of going through the potential Seamus derbies of 2019.
Yeah.
I see Andy Moran gets mentioned, Kyle Coney gets a mention, James Donoghue gets a mention, and then he mentions a couple of dubs who could do something off the bench as well, namely Kevin McManaman and Bernard Brogan. Who's it for you? Who is the most likely Seamus Derby this year? I was saying Ryan McHugh was already Seamus Derby, and we've already seen our moment for this generation last week, but you might have a different opinion.
Yeah. I think the Mayo thing is interesting in the sense of, you know, Horan has understood that there is an ability that he needs to, he can't go to the well again, obviously, with the same amount of players. So he needs, there's been a lot of talk over the last while that they need an influx, they need someone, so they need forwards. But he's not only done that, he's brought other people in elsewhere. So midfield, into his defence, which has freed up a number of options for him. And, you know, it's telling that the last day, they finished with a much more experienced team than they started with. And that is a great position to be in. Like, there's actually not that many teams, you know, in the senior championship who can say that they can do that. You know, there isn't. You know, you know, and that even goes for a lot of the top teams. You know, in the sense of, you say, well, I'm going to let this young guy out here, I'm going to say to him, listen, just go for it. And if it doesn't work for me, okay, I've got Andy Moran or Colin Boyle or whoever it is here ready to go in for him. So, you know I have this behind me, which is experienced, which is going to give it all. He's going to be motivated because he hasn't started, so he's going to go in and give me everything. But yet, I really have a shot to nothing with this guy. He could go in there and absolutely blow the lights out for me. Or if he has a tricky time, he'll learn from it and I'll whip him off. That's a good situation to be in. And I think you'll see more and more of the top teams kind of prepare like that. I would imagine Kerry will obviously do the same. And Dublin the same. But I just feel that, you know, you look at the Dublin kind of squad now, a lot of those older guys, like Bernard, Kevin McManaman, Paul Flynn's obviously gone. there's a less of a pool of that now. You know, who are your older guys that you're bringing in now? Is O'Gara still kind of knocking around? Is he an option? It's got a little bit tighter from the experience. Your experienced guys are the likes of Kilkenny now, but they're the guys you're going to have on the pitch. You know, you really are. You know, your Costello's probably now an experienced guy, but he's still obviously young. So there's a bit of a chasm there for them. You know, there is. But it's, you know, when I look at it and think about it, I worry for... Not that I worry, but I think Gavin is going to be delighted that Rory O'Carroll is back, because that is an area that I think a lot of other teams would have focused on, and you could see it during the league. Teams were trying to poke that full back line. They were trying to say, let's just probe this and see, are there frailties? And there certainly were frailties. But with O'Carroll back, I think it makes a difference. But I will say this, O'Carroll still is a player, like, I played against him. He's a big man, but he still likes stuff. Talking about Kevin, what he was saying there, Kevin Gavin, about the Ajax defender. He likes stuff out in front of him. He's very quick, he's very strong, and he likes to get a hand in. Balls, too many high balls. He's not, even though he's a big man, it's not something that he is massively used to. So he'll physically compete all right, but I wouldn't be, if I was a manager, I wouldn't be completely throwing that strategy out, because you could easily pull him out. You could easily, as a full forward, just pull him out, get him out of there, and then put the ball in to a full back line that, who are still a little bit tricky, because there's obviously been a decision. They have not, of course, the fact that he's been around and he's an excellent player, but there's definitely been an idea that they need to sort out that tree from an aerial point of view.
What's his biggest weakness, Rory O'Carroll, from coming up against him?
I would think it is probably that. It's a situation where he's backing up. As a fullback, see, he likes to play you. He's extremely quick, so he'll play you from in front, and he'll look to command you. So he stands in front of you and says, "Listen, this is about you getting around me," and he'll look to do that. If you beat him, he's got quick enough feet to probably just try to hold. I think it is a kind of a diagonal ball, which is a nightmare for any full-back, put in behind type thing. I think that's where there is a little bit of a frailty. But that also goes for, like, when you're playing with a dominant team, as Dublin have been. If you look at, say, Philly McMahon, Cooper, say O'Carroll, and who's the young lad? Well, not young lad anymore, from Coola.
Fitzsimons.
Yeah. All play very, like, if you go to Croke Park and watch them, they play very much in front. They stand 10 yards in front. And they kind of, as the ball starts to develop, they'll back up a bit. But they literally are saying, and it's a real dominant type of thing. Again, it's something that's been probably thought about. It's out in front and it's saying, if you need to win the ball, this guy's going to have to do something really good with it, or else you're going to have to come around me. But there's no way, it's nearly like I'm not worried about you,
Yeah.
And with the change, obviously, in the league helped that with the mark. It's a pity it's not in, to be honest, because I think it would be a really, really good thing to have for defenders such as that, because it completely changes it.
Totally, and hopefully we might see it come back next year, because I thought it was a good addition as well. That's it for the newspapers this morning.